There was something different about Kane Matthews, aka C-Slick. He wasn't just another rapper. His voice had weight, like every word came from a place deeper than most people dared to look. In the world of rap, where so many tried to sound hard but were hollow inside, C-Slick had lived it. The struggle, the poverty, the loss, it all poured into his music, making him one of the realest in the game. But with that reality came a darkness, one that followed him wherever he went. C-Slick had blown up over the past year. His latest album went platinum in weeks, and he was riding high. But with the fame came the pressure. His producer, Drex, pushed him harder every day for new material. The label wanted more tracks, more shows, more energy, and Kane was burning out. The inspiration wasn't flowing like it used to. After his latest concert in Chicago, Kane was feeling drained. He slouched in the back of his tour bus, the city's neon lights flickering through the window as they sped through the empty streets. His manager, Marcus, was busy fielding calls, making deals. All Kane wanted was a moment of peace. But something about this night felt off, like the air was heavier than usual. "Yo, Marcus," Kane called from his seat. "We gotta slow down, man. I'm losing it." Marcus glanced up, noticing the bags under Kane's eyes, the way his shoulders slumped. "I hear you, C, but the game don't stop. You got deadlines. Fans are hungry." Kane shook his head, sighing. The streets outside blurred into darkness as they left the city behind. The bus pulled into a stop at the edge of town. Marcus had arranged for a break in a small, quiet hotel, the kind of place where no one would recognize a rapper with 1 million followers. But as Kane stepped off the bus, something caught his eye. Across the street, a man stood by the curb, shrouded in a long, dark coat. The man was tall, his face hidden beneath the brim of a low hat. He didn't move, just stood there, staring. "Who the hell is that?" Kane muttered. Marcus looked, then shrugged. "Just some fan, probably. Ignore him." But Kane couldn't shake the feeling that the man was more than that. He felt it, deep in his gut, a sense of dread, like the man knew something he didn't. Later that night, after settling into his room, Kane pulled out his notebook. He stared at the blank pages, willing the words to come, but nothing. His mind was empty. Frustration boiled up inside him. Without the music, without the words, who was he? Just another face in the crowd. Then, the knock came. It was soft, almost polite. Kane stood up, his pulse quickening as he moved toward the door. When he opened it, the man from the street was there, standing in the dim light of the hallway. Up close, his presence was even more unsettling. His eyes were dark, almost hollow, and his skin was pale as death. "Who are you?" Kane demanded, his voice rough with irritation. The man smiled, a slow, sinister grin. "Someone who can help you, Kane. I know what you need." Kane frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You're looking for inspiration," the man said, his voice smooth as silk. "You're losing it, and it's killing you, but I can give it back." Kane laughed bitterly. "And how you gonna do that?" The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small cassette tape. It was old, like something straight out of the 90s. He held it out to Kane, who stared at it in confusion. "Play this," the man said. "It'll give you everything you need." Kane hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to shut the door, to get away from this man. But desperation gnawed at him. He needed a hit. He needed something to light that fire again. So, against his better judgment, He took the tape. The man turned to leave, but paused at the end of the hallway. "Be careful what you wish for, Kane. Some things once heard can't be unheard." Kane stood there for a long moment, staring at the cassette. It felt heavier than it should have, like it held something dark inside. He shook off the feeling and went back into his room. Pulling out an old boombox from his bag, Kane slid the tape into the player. As soon as he pressed play, the room seemed to shift. The air grew cold, and the lights flickered. A low, haunting beat began to play. Deep, slow, like a heartbeat from the underground. Then, the voice came. It wasn't like anything Kane had ever heard. It was deep, growling, filled with pain and anger. The words were raw, like they had been ripped from the soul of someone who had seen hell and survived. Kane sat frozen, his mind racing as the beat pulsed through him. The words crawled into his brain, planting themselves there, taking root. He grabbed his pen, unable to stop himself. The lyrics flowed from him, faster than he could write, filling page after page. It was dark, twisted, but brilliant. Every line was perfect. But as the tape played on, Kane began to notice something. The voice on the tape. It was his voice, his flow, his tone, but darker, angrier, like a version of himself he had never known. He couldn't stop writing, couldn't stop the words from pouring out of him, even as the voice on the tape began to shift. The beat slowed, turning sinister, like a warning. Then the voice whispered something that made Kane's blood run cold. "You belong to me now." Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The boombox sputtered, and the tape ground to a halt. Kane dropped the pen, his hands trembling. The air was heavy with silence, but in the corner of the room, a shadow moved. It was him, the man from the street, from the hallway, standing there, watching him. "You wanted it, Kane," the man said softly. "Now it's yours." Kane tried to speak, but his throat felt tight, like something was choking him from the inside. He backed away, but the shadow followed him, growing larger, darker. The man's voice was everywhere now, filling his head, drowning out his thoughts. "You wanted the words," the man hissed. "But the words are cursed. Every beat, every rhyme. They come with a price." Kane's back hit the wall. He gasped for breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you want?" he choked out. The man smiled, his eyes gleaming. "Your soul. The music owns you now. It'll take everything, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of you." Kane screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The next morning, Marcus found Kane slumped over his notebook, the pages filled with lyrics that told a story far too dark for the world to hear. His eyes were open, but there was no life in them, only emptiness. The cassette was gone, but the haunting beat echoed in Marcus's ears, a rhythm that would never leave him. C-Slick's next album dropped a month later. It was hailed as a masterpiece, a work of genius. But those who listened closely heard something else beneath the beats, something darker, a voice that whispered in the background, a voice that wasn't C-Slick's at all. And as his fame grew, so did the curse. And as the darkness fades, remember, the real chills linger long after the story's end. Until next time, brave souls.